Hi everyone, welcome to another edition of Indivisible Northern Kentucky District 4's Coffee Klatch Conversations with Candidates. I'm Andrea Ankrum, I'm the outreach group coordinator for the group, and we're doing these talks so you can get to know your candidates that are running in your district from the comfort of your own home. If you're watching this live, we have this on Facebook and on our YouTube channel as well. Please feel free to ask questions during this talk, and we will get them to the candidate. And we also have questions that we've already made up, but if you have a burning question, please go ahead and put those in. So I'm excited to welcome Jenny Urie. She's from District 62, and she's our guest for today. Welcome, Jenny.
Thank you for having me.
Thanks a lot for coming. I know you had to drive a little bit to get here, but really appreciate it. So why don't you go ahead and tell us about yourself and why you're running for office?
My name is Jenny Urie. I'm running for the 62nd District. I'm currently a public school teacher. I teach history at Owen County High School. I've also have experience teaching middle school in Gallatin County. In addition to that, I have 6 years experience at the Legislative Research Commission. I was a nonpartisan legislative assistant, and I worked for 14 different representatives over my career there. My husband John, who is also a school employee, is a maintenance man, and my daughter Lena, we live in New Liberty in Owen County. And I decided to run because I feel like there is an attack and a war on the working class from the leadership in Frankfort, and I just couldn't stand the thought of this war going on. I want to stop it.
Great. I mean, and we so need teachers running for for office. We need women running for office. So thank you so much for putting yourself out there.
Thanks.
Okay, so we're going to go ahead and just jump right into our questions here. And the first one is the hot topic that everybody is talking about, and that is Senate Bill 1, which hasn't passed yet, and I don't know if it will pass, but what are your thoughts on the pension issue? And this is pretty important to you, right? As a teacher, you know a lot about this. How should the pensions be funded, and what about the future of the pension system in Kentucky? Do you agree with what the governor is proposing, 401ks? And if not, what do you propose? What do you think? How do you think we can fix this?
Well, first of all, I am not completely convinced that there is this crisis. If you, Representative James Kay, as well as Jason Bailey, and others have all said, if we just allow the reforms that have already happened, if we allow them to continue on, our systems could be funded within 15, 20 years, maybe a little bit longer. And I don't know that we need to make any changes.
Okay.
The ideas of 401ks,
403Bs.
403Bs, yeah. I don't like that idea. I think we need defined benefit plans. Teachers don't get Social Security, and we need to have a solid foundation, a solid rock. We need to know that our checks are coming.
Right.
And Kentucky's had a cash flow problem for 20 years. We need comprehensive tax reform, and if we were able to have more revenue coming in, funding these plans would be much easier.
Right.
And so there, again, to quote Representative James Kay, it is my belief that we should have done tax reform before we even looked at the pensions.
So Senate Bill 241 is proposing to put in a constitutional amendment that would allow casino gambling and require 100% of proceeds to go to funding the retirement systems. Would you support something like that, or what is there something else, horse racing, online gambling? Would you support something like that to fund the pensions, or what other sources of revenue stream do you think we could do?
Well, as far as casino gambling, I believe it should be put to a vote by the people. And as far as other revenue, we give away so much more than we take in. We have so many tax exemptions and corporations and places like that don't have to pay a lot of tax. So we definitely need to look at other ways to get money. I mean, I think that casino gambling, may be something that would help Kentucky. but I don't think it should be anything that the General Assembly decides on. I believe it's something that the people should get to decide on.
So what are your thoughts on medical marijuana then? So as a new stream of revenue, not only medical marijuana, recreational marijuana, or even just growing hemp. Someone had suggested that if we grow marijuana here, even if it doesn't become legalized here, we could sell it to California or Colorado or some of those other states. What are your thoughts on using that type of industry to fund our pensions?
I think as far as medical marijuana, I think that we should allow that, especially, I think about people who are, at the end of their life, who need some relief, people who have to use prescription medicine to be able to, relieve pain and those kind of things. As far as recreational, I would be of the mind to kind of wait and see how these other states who have allowed recreational kind of let them look at their data. I know my father grew up in Colorado. I have family out there still, and I've talked to them about it. And I know that a lot of the issue out there right now as far as the recreational is the driving under the influence. And how do you test that? So, maybe we can start with medical and then wait and see if other states solve some of those issues. As far as hemp, like, oh my goodness, I just don't understand why we don't have hemp everywhere. It makes so much sense. It's an easy crop to grow. It would be a great replacement for tobacco. And I come from a very agricultural. Owen County is, we have tons of farms, and most of the there are large sections of the 62nd district that are agricultural. I think would be a great option for farmers. It's a renewable resource. We could use it for so many different things. And if Kentucky were to go in a direction as far as agriculture, I think hemp would be the way to go. So if elected, I would like to work towards expanding the hemp program, allowing more farmers to get into the program. We've tested long enough now. Let's go ahead and open it up and allow people to use that as a revenue source. And it's, a lot of farmers these days, most of them are part-time farmers. So this is still something that they could do part-time, could do it in addition to their cow interests and those kind of things. So I think it'd be a great idea.
Right. Okay. Back to public education. House Bill 134 would give tax credits for private school tuition. This would take away public school tax money, and the state would lose revenue, $25 to $75 million. What are your thoughts on charter schools and tax credits for private school tuition?
Well, if I were elected, I would work very hard at repealing charter school legislation. I would like for us to lift up our public schools instead of taking away from them. There are so many good things going on in public schools right now. We already work towards or have programs that are, very specific. Like, for example, at the high school where I teach, we have students that go to a specific program where they learn how to weld. Or
so do you have a technical school?
Technical school. But then in addition to that, through that same technical school, I apologize.
I know you're
the Owen County, or not Owen County, the Ohio Valley allergies have got me by the throat.
I know,
literally
everybody. Right? Yes.
But we have a program where people can graduate high school as certified CNAs.
That's great.
And I know in Scott County they also have other schools that are much more specialized. And I talk to my kids, and I ask them, what do you want to see that's done differently? And, well, I want to be trained for a job. I would like, they always talk about Germany, where you do apprenticeships.
Exactly, yes.
And so why are we taking money from our public schools and building new schools?
Right.
Let's just work towards making our schools more better with more choices,
Right.
And even in the small districts like I'm in, we could still make that happen. So the charter school thing, I'm not a fan.
I think it's great that you're actually talking to the kids about this, because it's it's their lives that are that you're working towards, and to get some input from them I think is really great, because they're the ones that probably have the ideas of how we can
I
move
do.
forward, and so I really like that. So here's a specific question from one of our members. What are your thoughts on charter school plans, and so we talked about that part, but what might that mean for students with severe disabilities? I think there's some concern that that you're taking students out of the public school system, and the money is going to these charters.
Right.
But they don't take students with disabilities.
Right.
They just take like the students that they want. So how do you think that will affect students with severe disabilities?
It won't be good.
I know.
I mean, I've heard rhetoric from pro charter school people, and they say things like, "Oh, well, the great thing about a charter school is you can only take the top 10%, and then you don't have to deal with the riffraff." And it just hurt me.
Right.
When somebody said that, it hurt me.
Right.
You go to school and you teach because you want to teach every kid there, and it's just. I think it would be very sad if we got to that point.
Right.
Everybody deserves an education, no
Absolutely.
matter your ability, or I mean, everybody deserves an education, and I feel like charter schools would certainly take away from that
Absolutely.
drastically.
Exactly. Okay, so what about higher education costs? Because they are skyrocketing, right? The average college student ends up with tens of thousands of dollars in debt upon graduating from college. I talked about how my son goes to UK.
Right.
We are paying this tuition. Do you have any solutions for this crisis? How can the Kentucky government support our students in their pursuit of higher education, such as loan forgiveness, tax
Right.
credits, to businesses who help pay student loans? I mean, even think about teachers. You have to go back and get your master's degree, right? And you have to pay for it.
I could buy a house with how much I own.
I know. I mean, a lot of students are like this,
Yeah.
where they come out of school, a lot of debt. They can't buy a house now because
Right.
they have so much debt. How can the Kentucky government help them?
Well, we've got to maintain the Keys money as
Yes,
is and not
I
mess
love
with
that.
it.
Right.
And if we could ever get some more revenue.
I know. It sounds like everything is coming back
It
to that.
is,
We
it
need
is.
fresh ideas,
Right.
for new revenue streams.
And I read something a couple days ago about how even on the federal level they're talking about taking away forgiveness programs,
Yeah.
and especially if someone who's going to commit their life to public service, I think that's very troubling. And of course, college isn't for everybody. I didn't go straight to college. I went straight to work. I worked for about 4 years before I went back. So if we could work with small businesses, corporations, and try to make programs for training that we could do through the colleges. I mean, if we all work together on this, we could make huge strides. But again, it just usually comes right back down to the mighty dollar. And
Right.
I think that the leadership in Frankfurt, this administration in particular, is not very friendly to higher education, and I think it's unfortunate.
I think so too, absolutely. So that kind of leads into this other question that we have about technical or skilled workers, right? So some of the unemployment numbers in Kentucky are due to the lack of skilled workers,
Right.
We can't fill all the jobs that we have. Our economy's booming, but we can't fill the jobs
Right.
because of the lack of skilled workers. So how do we ensure that we have enough skilled workers in this area to support our growing economy? And you did talk about that a little bit
Right.
with the high schools. But what other ideas might you have about how we get a skilled labor force? And I think a lot of it is you're working in an area, I'm going to talk about the coal miners, right?
Right.
And that's kind of, in decline. How do you get people retrained or
Right.
into a new field? How do we support that?
Well, I mean, again, I sound like a broken record here.
It's okay.
If we had more revenue, and I can remember times in my younger days when even where people were able to take classes that were paid for by either their employees or the state.
Right.
Those kind of programs are non-existent now. And so the technical school in my district in Owen County, we actually share it with 3 other districts. But how amazing would it be if we had our own technical school and
Right.
the other districts that we shared with had their own technical school?
Right.
How many more kids could we get into that program and be able to get that training? Because we have not in Owen County, but in our area, we have a lot of industry, and they are looking for skilled
Exactly.
workers. I think we need to lift up our community colleges and our technical colleges, continue to fund them, and hopefully we could start filling those gaps
Right.
with the skilled workers.
Right, because, the more people we have working, the more taxes we
Right.
pay,
Right.
that we pull in, and it's just like the big circle, right?
And I don't know if it's just because of that, but Kentucky, we have an out migration issue. A lot of people are leaving Kentucky,
Right.
and we need to keep people here. We need to keep people, contributing to the economy and living here, and we can do that through having good jobs
Right.
and giving them the ability to get that good job.
Right, exactly. I mean, because we do, at least in this district up here, we have Ohio right across the river,
Right.
and how do we keep people in Kentucky and stop them from going across the river
Right.
for these jobs, right? So, okay. I'm going to talk about right to work, because it's anti-union, basically. It comes down to that, right? And we have adopted this in Kentucky. And, it's going to hurt our unions, because they are going to be forced to, their collective bargaining power is going to be reduced. So what are your thoughts on Kentucky adopting a right-to-work environment, and how do you think this would affect union jobs and workers, and what would you do to try to help with that situation?
Well, I found it quite interesting that as soon as the new leadership came into Frankfurt, they passed right to work in like a very short amount of time.
One of the first things they
yeah,
did. Yeah.
Did it quite quickly. And I think it's very unfortunate. I would work towards repealing right to work. When I teach about the Industrial Revolution, I explain to the students why they needed unions, because they had 8-year-olds working 16-hour days.
Right.
People weren't getting good benefits. People were working in unsafe conditions. We don't need to go back to that. And the power is in the people, and unions play an important role in our society.
Right, and we can't lose them, right?
Right.
And I was just reading that states that have adopted right to work, they make, so much less in wages. Their overall
Right.
wages across the state
Right.
are lower than states that don't have right to work. So,
I have friends who work in skilled labor, and they have seen very significant reductions in their wages.
Right.
To the point where they're having to take a second job. They're going to lay block all day, but then they have to go work at a gas station or whatever,
right,
something.
Right, to make ends meet.
Right,
Yeah.
because their wages have been reduced. That's not fair. That's not fair to working class.
No, that's not. Absolutely. So, minimum wage. So, Senate Bill 17 would increase the minimum wage for many workers to $10 an hour by 2020. Do you support this, and do you think this is enough even?
Well, there was, the last time that I was working at LRC, there was a push for this. And it is a complicated situation, only because I think it would be hard on companies who only have a few workers,
Right.
or only have like $250,000 in revenue or something like that. Now, like Walmart, these large corporations, these hospitals, etc. I'm sure that they could afford to pay their workers more, but I'd like to take a hard look at it, solely based on the fact that I think that at some point there's got to be a line where there's going to be an exemption for small business,
Right.
because you don't want to make it to where they can't grow and succeed
Right.
in those
They
kind
can't
of
pay
things.
their current
Yeah.
employees.
Yeah. We don't want to drive them to insolvency.
Right.
And so I think it would be, I think it's something that we definitely need to look at, because you can't live on minimum wage.
Not currently.
No.
No. And
So-
even maybe $10 an hour.
Right.
And that's what the question is $10
Even enough, right?
Even enough.
Right.
So I think that would be a good thing, like you say, to look at and examine the whole thing. somebody else had talked about maybe doing it incrementally.
Right.
You know, not all at once, but maybe over a time period, and maybe even getting more than $10 an hour, but
Right.
over a set period of time. So
And
would
it could
you
even
be in
be,
support of that?
you know, tiered based on, you know, your profits for the year or something like
Right.
that, or how big your business is. Or,
Right, right.
I mean, I know that gets kind of complicated.
But, you know, we sometimes just can't say a blanket statement, and
Right.
it applies to everybody because
Right.
there's a lot of different, you know, employers out there. And like you say, Walmart is different than the mom and pop
Right.
store
Right.
in the middle of your town. So.
Exactly.
Okay. House Bill 29 is a comprehensive tax modernization bill, and you kind of touched on this earlier, how we need to, you know, look at our tax system here in Kentucky. And this is to make the Kentucky tax system more fair by lowering taxes for low and moderate income families, reinstating the estate sales tax, raising tax on cigarettes, and expanding sales tax to luxury services, close loopholes on corporations, and add an earned income credit. Do you support these proposed tax changes? Do you think that these proposals will be passed by the current legislative body?
I support them wholeheartedly. I believe that would be a solution to a lot of our issues. And it may have a slight chance in the House, but in the Senate, no.
No.
I don't think it'll be passed. And it's unfortunate.
Right. Do you know, is the Senate offering any kind of tax, you know, kind of a tax,
yeah, like a modernization.
modernization? Like, what are they looking at for taxes?
I want to say that there is one, but I don't want to.
I don't know if the
I don't
current
wanna-
legislative body is interested in taxes, you know, raising,
Right.
they're reducing them or getting rid of them for certain
Right.
groups, but are they?
I believe there is a proposal, and I know there's proposals for like casino gambling and those kind of things, but I'm not exactly sure, and I need to look into that.
Okay, okay.
But
these, I mean, it sounds like this House bill is something that you would support.
Definitely,
In these types
yeah.
of tax changes, okay.
we just give away too much money.
I've heard that, and how would you fix that?
Well, okay, here's an example. I was talking to another constituent from the 62nd District, and she said, I realized how regressive or backwards Kentucky's tax code is when her son, who was working like a summer job
Right.
at Blockbuster for minimum wage, he paid more in Kentucky income tax than her and her husband, who both were, you know, had full time. Yeah,
Wow.
like the percentage was
Right. Like
and
maybe 25% or something,
yeah, it
whereas
was-
they paid
it
less.
was. So I think that's part of the problem is that
Yeah.
it's regressive. It's kind of backwards. We need to flip it around.
And I'm worried too that we always talk about, I believe it was Kansas that did
yeah.
that trickle down
Right.
tax system that totally is not working. And,
Right.
and people keep talking about that Governor Bevin is thinking about doing that same sort of trickle down
Right.
here, and it doesn't work, right?
Right,
And
yeah.
it's been shown not to work. And so how would you kind of stand up against him, I guess, to say, no, this is not the right thing
Right.
to
I
do?
mean, we don't need to get rid of the income tax. We don't need to make it all a
Right.
consumption-based tax. That's not going to work.
That's hurting
Right.
poor people, basically. I mean, it's just not a fair tax system.
Yeah, I believe our tax code was written in the 50s, so, you know.
We need to modernize it.
Yeah, it
basically.
needs to be modernized. Things are much different now than
Right.
in the 50s.
Absolutely.
And there have been a lot of attempts in the past, especially from a Democratic-controlled House, to start to modernize it.
Mhm.
It always got killed in the Republican Senate.
Mm.
Not to say that, you know, they were perfect, that the House or the governors were perfect angels, but, you know,
Right.
there's so many, the Blue Ribbon Tax Reform Study, there's all these studies that are not being considered, that we need to get them out and look at them and, you know, look at the data again, update it, and make some action,
Right.
take some action.
Right, and there are other states, Minnesota, for example, that has redone their tax system in a way that's making their state flourish.
Right.
You know, so I think, you know, like you say, getting out, looking at other examples, other opportunities is going to be key. So,
Yes, definitely.
Okay, so House Bill 372 is an anti-marriage equality bill. It would allow social service and housing discrimination against same-sex married couples. If you were elected, what would you do to ensure that Kentucky does not discriminate against anyone, regardless of race, religion, or sexual orientation?
Well, first of all, I believe love is love.
Mm-hmm.
And, my father, both my parents, but my dad always told me, don't judge people on the way they look or what they believe or any of that thing. You just judge them by their heart.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it's unfortunate that we would even consider these kind of things where we would discriminate against beliefs or orientation. It's just not very nice.
Right.
I just don't like
Right.
it. And so I would fight that tooth and nail.
Right. So I'm looking through all of the bills that were proposed this session. There were several that were on that same
Right.
line of subject line, and so we just really need people to get in there that don't have that
Right.
that bias and discrimination. So it's disheartening to see
Yeah.
that there's actual legislators that are proposing some of these.
Definitely.
So how would you? I'm not an expert at how the Kentucky government works. How would you, if these bills were brought in, how would you stand up to them, or would you, how would you get them to see that this is not right?
So if I were to be on the committee where the bill would initially be introduced,
So it goes into committee.
into committee first.
Okay.
Of course, I would vote against it, and then if it was passed out of committee, then I would vote against it on the floor.
Mhm.
And I may try to speak with other fellow members to explain to them why it is not a good.
It seems like they go against the federal laws.
Right.
How can we be introducing laws that go against the federal laws?
Yeah, well, that's and the biggest thing too is I need to represent everyone in my district.
Right.
So I need to keep everyone's best interests at heart.
Right. Absolutely. So let's talk about reproductive rights. Many bills are being presented in the legislature now that would limit women's reproductive health rights. We feel like we're under attack a lot. What is your stance on a woman's right to choose what is best for her reproductive health? Here in northern Kentucky, St. Elizabeth Health System has taken over our basically everywhere.
Yeah.
And they don't perform some procedures due to their beliefs, such as tubal ligation. I mean, we have to go over to Ohio to get some of these procedures done. So, how would you help us on our right to choose what's best for our own reproductive health?
Well, I think one thing that I think really needs to happen is we need to, again, get more revenue, but
Right.
we need to more education and make it easier for adoption. The foster care system is busting at the seams.
Mm-hmm.
So, if we need to work towards, having better options. As far as the St. E thing, I was not aware of that.
Right. I knew that. Somebody had told me that
yeah.
earlier, but I don't know if St. Elizabeth is down in your area. But
We
I mean,
are,
that
yeah. Right.
could
I
happen
don't
as
know
well.
if that's.
Because
I'm
then we
curious,
have to travel outside of our area
Right.
to get some of these procedures done. So.
But if they're, that's something I'd like to look into as
Yeah.
far as if that's constitutional.
Right.
Because they are a private business, so.
But they probably get tax breaks
Right,
and
that's
tax,
true. That's true.
tax dollars and
That's
things
true.
like that. And so, that's just something that I thought was interesting
Yeah.
that they don't offer all services, and it's based on their belief.
Huh.
So keep that in mind
Yeah.
when you
Yeah.
when you get elected, right? That's happening, and
Yeah.
it's concerning. And what about supporting some of those health clinics that prevention? We
Right.
want prevention. We want to support.
Right.
Because I feel like those are under attack as well
They are.
and being shut down.
Well, the Kentucky legislature has already made a very super hard decision, much harder, through the legislation they've already passed. We've got one clinic in Kentucky to go to, but it's my belief that it's not the government's right to get between a woman and her doctor, and especially in cases of rape and incest, or if the mother's health is in danger. I just don't think it's the government's right. I mean, I would like to see I would like to see a lot more prevention, honestly.
Right.
I don't, I think we need to not. I would like for abortions to stop. I would not like for people to have them. But so I think if we could solve that through a lot more prevention and education and those kind of things.
And I feel like when we're closing down these, health care facilities that do counsel and offer birth control and things like that, we're putting people in a corner, and so we need funding for those.
Yeah, and it's clinics. We I would like to see everyone be able to get good birth control, and not just the pill, but like other options that are a lot more effective.
Right.
If we want to be trying to make sure that people don't have abortions, well, let's give them the needs the needs to not get pregnant in the first place.
Right.
And the other thing too is like I take issue with the fact that the leadership in Frankfurt is not completely pro-life, and that they don't seem to be supporting all stages of life.
Right.
I care about all stages of life. The young children, the kids in school. We're gonna take away funding for our Frisky programs. Like if they had any clue what happened at a Frisky program and what they did for young people.
Can you elaborate on that?
Oh my goodness! I mean, it's just we have an amazing program at our school, and they help kids pay for things. They help pay for class fees. They're hungry, they go get a snack. They have a ripper in their shirt, they go get a shirt. They take them to
So are these volunteers or
no? Frisky programs are state funded.
Okay.
But anyway, like I was saying, I want to support all life.
Right.
Let's take it across the board.
So that kind of leads into healthcare then. Some people are really pushing for single payer health care.
Right.
Is that something you would support, or what do you think about our current healthcare insurance situation versus like a single payer where everybody's paying into it, everybody has access to health care?
It's health insurance and health care costs are astronomical, and I've spoke with a lot of healthcare providers in my area, and I don't feel like they are the ones who are taking all this money and running home and buying yachts and vacations to Cancun. I think all the money is going to the big corporations, pharmaceutical companies, and the health insurance companies, and it's unfortunate. And it's just, I think that's the biggest issue, is that there's so much money going into it, and it's not helping anybody but the people who own the companies.
Right.
So that needs to stop. And I feel like even in Washington, I mean, they give our congressional representatives and senators lots and lots of money, and it's they're just not thinking about what's best for the people.
Right.
John and I we're lucky to have we can afford our health insurance mostly, but we have a very low coverage plan.
We have I have high deductible.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah.
My out of pocket is outrageous, but that's what we can afford.
Right.
And I can remember the good old days. Back when I could go to the doctor and didn't pay a copay.
Right.
And my
now was this being a teacher, or was this a private insurance?
This was as a public employee. And I could my monthly cost each month was $15-$20.
Right.
Right. And it's 7-8 times now.
I know. So. It's really skyrocketed. So it's a huge issue for a lot of people, and that single payer. I think trying to get that middleman out, the health insurance, the for-profit health insurance companies. They're taking all this money that could be spread. That could be used for actual health care. So.
And again, it goes back to not keeping the interests of the people in mind. It's all about the corporations.
Right. And we need people in Frankfurt that will work for us, right? Okay, so we're going to go to the opioid crisis, right? There's multiple factors involved in this crisis. Big pharma, physicians over-prescribing, there's need for alternative pain medications. What are your thoughts and ideas for combating this epidemic in Kentucky?
Well, in my district, we've got issues with heroin and pain pills and meth.
Right.
It's, and, excuse me, sorry. I have friends and who have family members who have struggled with this and been through treatment centers and those kind of things, and they've went broke doing it.
Right.
So, and it's hard to find treatment centers. I would love for us to be able to spend more money on opening up more treatment centers, finding effective treatments. I don't believe that things like Suboxone may not be that effective. Let's do some research and find what's most effective. And it's just it just breaks my heart to think about young children who whose parents are addicted to drugs.
Absolutely.
They're not getting taken care of.
Right.
It's something that I really would like to see fixed and fixed soon.
What about going after big pharma? And would you work towards regulations on them? These physicians that are overprescribing.
Right.
We hear about small towns where they have so many of these the pharmaceuticals going into these small towns, and they don't even have that many people there. And that's physicians that are overprescribing, and the drug companies pushing this. So, what would you suggest? How we can get that under control? 'Cause I think that's a huge part of this.
They've made a start. What is it? You can't. I don't think you can be prescribed pain medicine more than like a 3 or 4 day supply, something like that. So I believe that's a start.
Right.
But then, of course, what do you do about people who have chronic pain?
I know.
So that's a hard thing. And I think that we need to spend more time into looking into alternative means besides opioids.
Like, I don't even know if and it would probably depend on the situation, but I am so nervous and scared about this that if I were to be injured, would I even want to be on opioids? So you're so anxious about it now. I don't want to become addicted. You see what happens to people, and so, getting physicians to think about alternative ways.
Right. Well, and I think a lot of it depends on the physician, and because I've had situations where I've lost my gallbladder, I've had a kidney stone, etc. And it depends on the physician.
Pain medication,
yeah,
right?
Well, but it depends on how many they give you.
Yeah.
Because I've had ones that have given me like 30, and I'm like, I don't need I need like 3 days, 4 days. I'll be fine. And then I have others who gave me just enough, and then I switched to ibuprofen, and I'm fine.
Right.
So it is an issue with the doctors. But, then, okay, so the ones who are prescribing 30, are they being given extra rewards by the pharmaceutical companies? Like, what's going on there?
Right.
So,
so it sounds like we have some things that we can look into that could potentially help.
Right.
Okay. House Bill 227 is an anti-solar bill.
Oh, gosh.
This would reward monopoly utility companies and punish consumers. If passed, it would put rooftop solar out of reach for most Kentuckians. Kentucky needs to keep up with the rest of the country in terms of clean, green energy. What would you do to help protect and promote the use of clean energy?
Well, so, of course, Representative Jim Gooch, he switched parties a couple years ago. He was a Democrat, now he is a Republican. And he, this year, to get this bill passed, added 3 members to his committee. He's chairman of the committee, added 3 members so he could get the bill passed. He claimed that it was because he couldn't get a quorum, but he added 2 Republicans and a Democrat. And it was just dirty politics. And it just doesn't make any sense to me. Again, it's all about big money. Who's being paid here. I don't know why in the world we would ever not work towards being able to ensure a future for our children, for your son, my daughter, our grandchildren. We know that gas and oil and coal is not going to last forever, so let's embrace it. Owen Electric, which is in Owen County, they've got a solar farm, and I'm just so proud of them for doing that.
Right.
We can work together to where we can ensure a future for our electricity, because we're gonna have to have it. Right. And this bill is just ridiculous. It's just
I know. It's heartbreaking. And, you know, we want to do what's right for the environment and for Kentucky, and to see us going backwards is frustrating.
And I mean, I've got family members who really want to add, solar to their. My brother owns a farm, and they've been looking into getting solar panels. But if this passes through the Senate, they're looking at a whole lot larger cost. And
it's out of reach for most people.
Right, and that's what they're trying to do, and it's just it's vindictive, and it's ridiculous.
Agreed. Okay, so we're going to talk about guns.
Okay.
Hot topic right now, right? Especially in schools and things like that. So should Kentucky have stricter gun ownership laws? Do you think assault rifles should be banned?
Well, okay. So I'm a gun owner. I own one gun. It's essentially a tool to me, and it's something that we need. I have a little mini farm. We've got 3 acres, but we raise sheep. And, we have had a rabid critter that we had to put down. Take care of. And my weapon is considered, or it is a semi-automatic weapon. So I've read about this. I've talked to people. I've read some more. I've talked to more people, and I finally come to the conclusion that I don't really think we can move forward until we have some data. You look at what was the common denominator with the school shooters. I mean, do I want school shootings to stop? Of course I do. Every time that I have to do active shooter drill with my students, it just terrifies me. I hate it. I hate it. When it talks about banning assault rifles, well, how are we going to know how much it costs to do a buyback program if we don't know how many assault rifles are in the United States? And do we even know that assault rifles are the common denominator? I don't know. I mean, it's just, we have no data, and I don't see how we can move forward without doing some research.
Which we're not allowed to do.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah,
I don't know if that's state by state, or if that's just a federal
It's more
thing.
of a federal thing, from what I understand. But, it's hard, especially in my area, because, most everybody has a gun.
Right.
And, I have constituents who are, they do, like, the competitions. And they're responsible AR-15 owners. So, and it just makes it hard, and I don't know what the answer is.
So do you think, as a gun owner, do you think that there needs to be more regulations to getting a gun, to owning a gun, raising the age, more thorough background checks, closing some of these loopholes where you could go to a gun show and maybe not have a background check? Do you support those types of things?
Those are all things we need to look at when we get our data. So, gun show loophole. Sorry. Are guns that are used in violent crimes always from gun shows? We don't know. Right. So, and like in my particular situation, I inherited my gun from my father. So, then you look at those kind of situations where people, there's just so many questions.
I know. It's a complicated issue.
In the meantime, we have the possibility of a school shooting at any time. Please, no. But, and, a lot of people, I've seen a lot of rhetoric on Facebook. But I will say, as a public education, as a teacher, we need more resources for students. I'm on the front lines. I see the students who eat lunch by themselves. I see the students who are hurting. Our counselor is an excellent counselor, but quite honestly, he spends so much of his time dealing with testing or dealing with scheduling.
Not enough time with the students.
I would love to see more resource officers in buildings, especially if we could get veterans to come in. I would love to give veterans jobs. And, and the resource officer not only will protect us, but, that's one more adult in the building that can build relationships with students.
Right.
We've got a lot of kids, and, you as a teacher, you try to get to all of them. You make sure you know them and do the best you can. But the more adults we have in the building making relationships with students, the better.
Right.
And
So they don't fall through the cracks. I mean,
exactly.
It seems like some kids are falling through the cracks, right?
And I mean, it's heartbreaking.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah.
So here's a question coming in: how do you feel about arming teachers? So yourself,
Well,
or your coworkers,
Yeah.
do you feel like that is a viable situation? You've got so much to worry about as it is, and now you may, you're carrying a gun as well. Or I don't know how that would work if it's locked away somewhere.
Well,
or
that's what I was going to say. Is there's so many unanswered questions like who's going to pay for the gun? Who's going to train me to use the gun?
Right.
What happens if a student overtakes me and gets the gun from me?
Right.
Where does the gun go at night?
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know that
there's
I would
liability insurance.
Right.
There's all sorts of questions.
And I support the Second Amendment. Like I said, I'm a gun owner, but I don't know that I would particularly want to teach about King Louis and the Palace of Versailles with a Glock on my hip. I don't know that I would be really.
Do you know other teachers that would feel comfortable?
Yes, yes, I do, and I know ones that have said that they would go after the active shooter, and I mean, more power to them. And honestly, like when I have my nightmares about school shootings, I envision myself like taking a chair and hitting them over the head with it or something.
Right.
But if it came down to it, but to me again, I feel like I don't know that the teachers need that
an extra
responsibility or whatever. Let's just stop. Let's go back to why the school shootings happen.
Mm-hmm.
Let's get more adults in the building. Let's get some school resource officers in the building.
Right. It sounds like there's things that we can do first, and
Right.
making sure. I mean, some people have talked about how their schools don't even. You just walk in.
Right.
There's no secure point where everybody comes in.
Well, we are very fortunate. We have a very good system as far as we have a it's called a something Sally, where you come in, you have to buzz, and then you come through. Like
we have that too at our school. It's like you get buzzed into the office, and before you can even get into the main school.
And after the Florida shootings, of course we all talked about it. And we were like, if you see a door open, you close it. Like we have to be vigilant.
Right.
We can't let strangers in, and
And I think some schools have addressed this, but other ones haven't. And so maybe can there be some mandatory things that all schools have to do?
I know there's been a lot of talk about metal detectors, and again, you go back to the cost.
Mm-hmm.
From my perspective, it may or may not work, but I'm thinking about, it's January, it's -17, and how are we going to get all those kids in the building quick enough, and those kind of things. Like those are things we all need to look at.
Right.
Again, if we had some data, and because there are schools that have metal detectors.
Right.
Let's talk to them and see if that has even helped. Because who knows?
Right. I think you're absolutely right. Is the data and looking at the situation before we go ahead and jump to we got to do this.
Right.
I think that's good. Okay. Any other comments on arming
I don't
teachers?
think so.
Okay. So what about protecting voter rights and gerrymandering? What would you do to protect our voting rights and protect against gerrymandering? It does seem to be a problem in all states. It seems like that when you look at the districts, some of them are really kind of crazy.
Yeah.
So, what would you suggest to help with this problem?
Well, so the next census will be 2020, and then of course we will, or the General Assembly will be able to redistrict sometime after that. And I don't know. You almost have to have a change in the leadership in a sense, that they're more worried about creating districts with a common factor instead of trying to create a district that they know they can win.
Right.
And as far as voter rights, I mean, I would protect them as much as I possibly, whatever way I could protect them, I would.
Right.
And I think that we need to work towards getting people more interested in becoming involved and knowing their candidates and voting. I mean, that's one thing that I talk to my students about all the time.
I was going to ask you about how do you get your students, I don't know what you said, what grade you...
10th grade.
10th grade, but so it's a couple years before they can vote, but how do you get them excited about the whole process? Because I think a lot of them are not... My son, he didn't vote in the last election. He's in his 20s, and I was very angry about that, but how do they feel like their voice doesn't matter, their vote doesn't count, is there some way in the public school system that we could really emphasize that? As they're seniors,
Right.
A lot of them don't take history
Right,
or
we don't.
civics as a
Right.
senior. You know, how do you get that message to them as a senior?
Well, and I think just to go back, like kind of moving away from the schools thing, part of the problem is that campaigns have just gotten so ugly, and as a nation, we're so polarized.
Right.
You know, there's so little middle now. It's everybody, and then so we've all kind of become quite ugly about it.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I can tell you about countless friends that are like, well, I just got off of Facebook because I was tired of politics.
Right.
And I think it's due to the fact that things have gotten so ugly. So if we can move towards, you know, making campaigns not so much about let me attack you,
Right.
and this is all the things that are wrong with you. This is what I stand for. Do you vote for me?
Right. And that's one of the reasons we were trying to do this too.
Yeah.
We didn't talk about any other your opponents.
Right.
You know, we just hear you get to talk about the issues, and people get to see. Okay, this is what you stand for, right? So
thank you for having me.
I know. So we are at the end of our questions.
Okay.
We're going to wrap up, and so if you want to just take a few minutes here and talk to the audience again about why they should vote for you.
So I would like to ask for your vote. In the Democratic Party, primary, May 22nd. You know, my experience, not only as a public employee and a public school teacher, but my experience at LRC, working as a nonpartisan employee, I learned a lot about what a good representative does. And a good representative represents their people. They're willing to work on both sides of the aisle and do what's best for the people they represent. And I just ask for your vote May 22nd.
Great, and I wish you the best of luck. Do you have something else
Oh,
you
yeah.
want to say?
I was saying, sorry. I have a website. It's Jenny Urie, JENNY.URIE.com. Please check it out. And I also have a Facebook page and a Twitter.
Great, and these are being recorded as well, and they will be posted on the Indivisible Facebook page and the YouTube page as well. So if you don't get to watch it live, you can watch it recorded, and then reach out to Jenny if you have questions. So thanks again for joining us tonight, and thank you for
Thanks for
driving up
having me.
here.
Yeah.
You're welcome.